Imagine a night where the sky has no stars, only the relentless, cold rain. It's a night that washes the color out of the city, turning everything into shades of gray and black. The streets, usually bustling with life, are now empty, reflecting the harsh glare of streetlights on slick, wet asphalt. The sound of the downpour is a constant, mournful drumbeat against windows and rooftops, a sound that makes you pull your own blankets a little tighter. For most, this rain is an inconvenience, a reason to stay indoors, to feel cozy and safe. But for some, this rain isn't just an inconvenience. It's a threat, a cold, relentless enemy. On a night just like this, in a forgotten corner of the city, a man named Arthur tried to find sleep. Arthur wasn't just a man. He was a story, a collection of memories and moments that had led him to this wet, unforgiving pavement. He had a life before this, a life with a home, with laughter, with warmth. But life, as it often does, had taken a sharp, unexpected turn. Now, his home was wherever he could find a sliver of shelter from the elements. Tonight, that shelter was a small alcove, behind a closed bakery, a space that offered little protection from the wind-whipped rain that seemed to come from every direction. His clothes were soaked through, clinging to his skin like a second icy layer. Every gust of wind was a physical blow, stealing what little body heat he had left. He shivered uncontrollably, his teeth chattering a frantic rhythm against the symphony of the storm. He had nothing. No blanket, no cardboard, just the thin, worn-out jacket that was more water than fabric. He curled into a tight ball, trying to make himself as small as possible, a desperate attempt to preserve any warmth. Sleep felt like a distant, impossible dream. In this cold, lonely world, he felt completely invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of a society that had moved on without him. He closed his eyes, not with the hope of rest, but with a weary resignation to the misery of the night. But he wasn't entirely alone. A few feet away, huddled under the same meager overhang, was a creature as lost and forgotten as he was. A stray dog, a scruffy-furred mutt with eyes that held the same weary sadness as Arthur's. The dog's fur was matted and dark with rain, and he too trembled from the biting cold. They were strangers, two beings from different worlds, brought together by a shared misfortune. For days, they had existed in the same small orbit, sharing scraps of food when they could be found, offering a silent, unspoken companionship. Arthur had named him Buster. Buster watched Arthur, his intelligent eyes filled with a concern that transcended species. He could feel the man's shivers, hear the chattering of his teeth. The dog went softly, a low, mournful sound lost in the noise of the storm. He nudged Arthur's hand with his wet nose, a small gesture of comfort. Arthur opened his eyes and offered a weak, tired smile, patting the dog's head. "It's a cold one tonight, huh? Boy," he whispered, his voice hoarse. They were two lonely souls in a storm, sharing a moment of connection in a world that had turned its back on them. Then something shifted in Buster. He stood up, shaking the cold water from his coat, and looked around with a new sense of purpose. His eyes scanned the dark, wet alleyway. He wasn't just looking, he was searching. He knew Arthur was in trouble. The cold was dangerous, and Buster seemed to understand this with an instinct that was pure and profound. He trotted out from under the relative dryness of the alcove, back into the full force of the rain, his paws splashing in the growing puddles. Arthur watched him go, a pang of loneliness hitting him even harder. Was his only friend abandoning him? Buster disappeared into the shadows of the alley, his form swallowed by the darkness and the downpour. Arthur waited, the minutes stretching into an eternity. The hope that had flickered for a moment died down, leaving him colder than before. He was alone again. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the cold. But then he heard a sound, a scraping, dragging sound coming from the direction Buster had gone. He pushed himself up on his elbows, peering into the rain-swept darkness. A shape was emerging from the gloom. It was Buster, and he was dragging something. It was a large, heavy object, and the dog was struggling, pulling with all his might. His paws slipped on the wet ground, but he didn't give up. He grunted with effort, his muscles straining. As he got closer, Arthur could see what it was. It was a blanket, a dirty, torn, discarded blanket that must have been lying in a nearby dumpster. It was soaked and heavy, but it was a blanket. Buster dragged his prize all the way to Arthur's side, dropping it with a proud, exhausted pant. He looked up at Arthur, his tail giving a single, hopeful wag. He nudged the heavy, wet cloth towards the man. Arthur was stunned. He stared at the dog, then at the blanket, and back at the dog. Tears welled up in his eyes, mixing with the raindrops on his face. These creatures who had nothing had braved the storm to bring him this. It wasn't just a blanket. It was a gift of pure, selfless love. "You brought this for me?" Arthur choked out, his voice thick with emotion. He reached out and pulled the dog into a hug, burying his face in Buster's wet fur. "You incredible boy." He spread the blanket out as best he could. It was cold and damp, but it was a layer. It was a barrier, however thin, against the biting wind. He lay down on one half of it and wrapped the other half over himself. But Buster wasn't finished. He saw that Arthur was still shivering, that the wet blanket offered only marginal comfort. So the dog did something extraordinary. He carefully climbed on top of Arthur, lying directly on his chest and stomach. He wasn't just cuddling. He was positioning his body to cover as much of Arthur's torso as possible, sharing his own body heat, acting as a living, breathing shield against the cold. The weight of the dog was comforting, a solid, warm presence in the vast, cold emptiness of the night. Buster's warmth began to seep through Arthur's wet clothes, a slow, steady heat that began to push back the encroaching chill. It was a warmth that came not just from a physical body, but from a loving heart. Arthur's shivering began to subside. He wrapped his arms around Buster, holding him close. The dog rested his head on Arthur's shoulder and let out a soft sigh of contentment. Under the relentless rain, in a forgotten corner of the world, a man and a dog found warmth in each other. It wasn't the warmth of a fire or a heated room. It was the profound, life-affirming warmth of unconditional love. Buster didn't see a homeless man. He saw his friend, someone in need. And Arthur didn't see just a stray dog. A Sawahiro, a guardian angel with 4 paws and a scruffy coat. That night, as the storm raged on, 2 beings slept. Their breathing synced into a peaceful rhythm. The cold was still there. The rain still fell, but it no longer mattered as much. They had created their own shelter, a fortress built not of bricks and mortar, but of loyalty and compassion. They were each other's family. They were each other's home. This story is a powerful reminder that love and compassion can be found in the most unexpected places. It shows us that the smallest act of kindness can be a lifeline in a storm. True wealth isn't about what you have, but what you are willing to give. And sometimes, the greatest heroes don't wear capes. They have fur, a wet nose, and a heart full of love. They remind us that no one should ever have to feel invisible or alone, and that even on the darkest, coldest nights, the warmth of a friend can be the only shelter we truly need. This incredible bond between a man and his dog is a testament to the fact that love is the most powerful force in the universe. It transcends language, species, and circumstances. It is a light that can never be extinguished, even by the fiercest of storms. Like, share, and subscribe for more videos.